All right, here we are with the Warrior Poet podcast and my long-lost Italian brother, Daniele Bolelli. A real pleasure, as we've talked about before, as we've been discovering each other's work. It gets a little confusing sometimes.
It does.
Like, did I take too much Ambien and drink too much red wine and do this in my sleep, or is this a brother from another mother?
Yeah, when I listen to you, I'm puzzled by the fact that I'm speaking without an Italian accent, and I'm like, wait, but because it's not me. That's why. That's what's going on. But
yeah, so it's great to be here and great to connect with you. It'd be fun to see what we can talk about and conspire together here.
Let's roll.
This. All right, sounds good. So one of the things that struck me, we talk about some of the similarities in our philosophy. Obviously, I go by the moniker warrior poet, which is an idea of embracing the paradoxes inherent in that concept itself. The swordsman and the poet. Don't have to take it literally. You can apply that to everything else. But one of the things that I noticed was some consistencies and similarities in our upbringing themselves. So, for those of you who haven't read the book, take us through a little bit about how your parents raised you and how that's kind of different from a lot of what you see currently.
yeah, my parents were really young, but they were super self-confident, had it together. At least, I don't know about financially. In every other way, they had it together. But their attitude was very, as far as their way of raising kids, their approach was to give me a ton of freedom.
Yeah.
They would give me a ton of freedom. At the same time, what they were trying to do is just let me come to good conclusions on my own. Not tell me like, hey, you do this because your father told you.
Right.
Listen to me kind of stuff. I would laugh at it. I would be like, yeah, screw you, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, but they would do things where they would have me, it's like, what do you think about this? Do you think it's a good idea? Because this is what can happen. And then they would eventually leave me the option of doing what I wanted, but kind of guiding me along the process of making informed decisions.
Letting you find the risk and rewards, consequences. I remember that same thing too. My father was very much in that libertarian philosophy, almost too much so.
Right.
It was, and then my stepfather came from a different kind of school of thinking. And he would try to occasionally just get off with saying, no, just do this.
Right.
And I'd be like, why?
Yeah.
He'd be like, because I said so. No, why? Why are you saying so? Like, explain it to me. And he had to eventually learn that he had to kind of follow that, because I just wouldn't accept. I just wouldn't accept the reasons why not.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of parents, they don't understand that kids, even at a super young age, can start to grasp that and then internalize it and start to get the process of making good decisions.
Kids are smart.
They are.
If you treat them as such, they are smart. And granted, there's the time when stuff has to be done now, where you need to make the big voice and emphasize, hey, attention now, we need to work.
Trust me,
but for
I know better.
Exactly. But for the most part, if you reason with kids and you treat them with respect, they'll respond. They listen. Like the other day is like, with little kids is they repeat anything they hear. So you start, you drop something, you're like, fuck. The next second they're like, fuck this. I'm like, oh God, no, please. But
right, little repeaters like
it was fun. It's like, I couldn't be hypocritical and go to my daughter and be like, you can never say that, but you just did. He's like, well, that's different. He's like, you can't do that. So what I told her was, look, certain words, I try to explain now, there's a context for everything. And basically it's like, so you don't use some of this stuff in front of your teachers because they may think it's rude and you offend them. You don't want to hurt their feelings, and you don't want to do that around other kids where their parents may get bugged. You wanna get it off your chest and yell something when you're around me at home? I don't care. That's fine. And so she would be like all thrilled that she gets to do something that's not approved by everybody else.
Right.
So she's like, I'm getting away with something, but then because I let her, then she trusts me on, hey, you don't do it in this context because you hurt somebody's feelings.
Yeah, you set the rules that you do set get respected then. Because if you set nonsensical rules that the kid knows are bullshit,
right?
And then you're trying to set real rules, how are they going to differentiate?
Precisely. I remember with my mom, the first time I ever smoked weed was with my mom when I was 11.
Right on.
And it was funny because by the time, in Italy especially, everybody smokes cigarettes, right? And so by the time my friends at 12, 13 and so on, they were starting smoking cigarettes. So I started a tiny bit, and I remember my mom telling me, basically, are you fucking stupid? What are you doing? Is one thing, if you want to try for experimentation, have a little bit out of a joint once in a while, that's one story.
Sure.
If you get addicted to a substance that's proven to be really bad for you, that's a whole different story.
Yep.
I mean, do whatever the hell you want, but that's really dumb.
Yeah.
And knowing that she was not the mother who would tell me, as you put it, no to everything, but she would say some things that all other parents would frown on and be up in arms, she would give me freedom, making me feel all empowered about it. And then she tells me this is a stupid idea. I'm going to listen when she tells me that. And in fact, I was like one of the very, very few people among my friends who never smoked cigarettes, meaning like getting addicted to it. And works for me.
Works for you. And it would work for everybody, too. I mean, imagine if our government was that crafty. Imagine if all the laws that the police and the government made were good for us.
Right.
You know, in that world, you would see the cops and be like, oh, great, the cops are here. You know, because all the laws were just. You know, and they weren't going to bust you for anything that was really stupid. You know, then you would have real respect for the law. You know, and it'd be easy, and you wouldn't. But now it's like, oh, fucking cops around here. What are they trying to do? What are they going to bust me for smoking some weed or whatever crazy, stupid law that you have that you break, you know, on a day-to-day basis.
Of course.
And it creates this antagonistic relationship, and it's the same with parents, you know. But it's unfortunately our culture is not designed that way. And as you aptly put in your book, religion, state, and extending all the way down to parenting, it's all kind of the same paradigm.
Absolutely.
Just do what I say. Why? I don't know.
Because you should.
Because you should.
Right.
Yeah.
No,
Because I have a bigger voice.
Yeah, it's
and
crazy.
a bigger stick.
Now, there's something to be said though about this is one of those nature or nurture kind of thing, because it's like if somebody gives you freedom, you're gonna use it in a certain way. If you give freedom to other people, they may fuck up with it. You know, use it really badly. Now, clearly that doesn't mean that, well, in that case, then we'll give freedom only to you and not to anybody else, because you end up in this game that's obviously screwed up. But at the same time, it's also true that not everybody's ready for the same degree of freedom. That some people crave and need rules.
Right, but is that because you're changing the system halfway through? Because they've been taught one system, which is just do what I say, and then all of a sudden you're giving them freedom, and it's like, woohoo, I got freedom, what the fuck? You know, I don't understand how to use it. So it's hard to know. I mean, I almost feel like if everybody was brought up with that being reinforced by religion, reinforced by state, reinforced by parent, it wouldn't be an issue. But the issue is, you know, when you change it. It's kind of the same with the drug laws, in my opinion. Like right now, if everybody just said, you know, ecstasy is legal, you know, it could get a little wild for a little while. You know, people are like, woohoo! Right. You know, because we've been taught, like, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. Okay, now this is good. All right, I'm going to take 10 tonight and then see what happens, you know. So you have to get these kind of transitionary periods and pay attention to those.
Yeah, because you're right. That's the question mark. Are people who screw up horrendously when you give them space? Is it because you have repressed them for so long that once you open the lid and let them free to explore, they go nuts and they don't know how to handle it? Or is it just something innate that some people are better at handling it than others? I like to think that it's not an innate thing. The innate aspects sound random and not particularly pleasant as a concept. Like, you are just born smart, and sorry, you are an idiot. That's
well, in this case, it's even worse. It's you're either born moral or born immoral.
Right.
You know, which is, I tend to think that people have, you know, certain proclivities, tendencies. You know, and maybe things are more challenging for others. Like certainly, it's more challenging for some people to lose weight than other people.
Sure.
You know, it's not like that's an excuse to just be a gigantic, enormous, fat bastard because it's more challenging. It's just that's your challenge.
Yep.
You know, it's harder for you to do that. I think for some other people, they may have a constitution that makes it more difficult. But I think if you worked with them the right way and kind of identified it, I think that could help. Have you ever read Aldous Huxley's The Island?
Yeah, forever ago. I was
a long time ago.
Teenager or something.
So he kind of talks about that there being, and he actually puts numbers to it, which they probably just made up. But, you know, some kind of 20% of the population that are like, he called them somnambulists, people who just kind of repeat whatever is told and dogmatically.
Only 20?
Yeah, or some maybe even higher, but like hardcore, you know, that'll just take it and then there's probably some other people that are more challenging. And then I guess his solution was to train the teachers to be able to, and the parents. He believed in kind of a tribal raising the children anyways, but the important people in the kid's life, from the parents, the teachers, to everybody, to kind of identify these people and work with them uniquely in ways to kind of prevent that from coming, because there is something to the nature part.
No, definitely there is, but as you say, you can have some people may have more innate potential than somebody else, but the bottom line, it depends how that potential is cultivated.
Right.
Because even the one who may have less from the start, if you cultivate it right, they can go much further than they would if you start just squashing whatever is in them from day one.
Well, you can compact it and make it crazy.
Oh, exactly.
You think about someone like the worst person that comes to mind, let's say Hitler, like at what point was he destined to be that guy?
Right.
Or was, were there periods of intervention where, obviously you look back to the childhood, he was troubled from an early age.
Right.
He was torturing animals, I think. I don't know his biography that well, but there was obviously serious warning signs along the way. But if you were able to kind of empower him, give him more security that he needed, and
even the childhood thing, is it because from day one there was crap going on with him, so by the time you are 7 years old you are screwed up, but that's not because necessarily you are innately that way. Maybe it's just you had a really bad string early on. That's one of those you can never answer kind of questions.
It's hard to know.
It starts even before birth. How the mother eats, what the mother does, what kind of mood they are in during pregnancy. Everything affects a baby.
Sure.
The delivery, there are so many things that by the time you plop out and you are in the world, you already have a long history behind you.
Yeah.
And so the whole genetics versus culture thing, you can never know because there's just no way to tell.
That's true. So you need as many safeguards and catch as many things as possible. I think, we have so many great advantages of the world we live in now, this kind of global world where information is easily accessible, but what we're missing still is that kind of tribal sense.
Yep.
And I think that was, it seems like, and I want to get into this a little more, it seems like you've had some experiences and familiarity with the Lakota people, but in that tribal sense, you don't hear about these tribes people that are doing these really crazy, fucked up things that us in Western society do. And what is it? Is it living on the land? Is it just that the tribe is there to kind of reinforce certain behaviors? Or, you don't see the kind of, you don't hear about the psychopaths that you hear about in industrial, Western society where people can be more solipsistic.
No, definitely. And I think part of it is, we are designed as tribal beings. We crave social contacts. As human beings, we have lived in small tribes of hunters and gatherers for 90+%. Some people estimate up to 99% of the time we've been around. So obviously that's part of who we have been from day one. And it's only in relatively recent historical times that even agriculture showed up, and you start having farming villages, or you start having industrial societies. All of that is like a blink of an eye.
Yep.
So the fact is, there's something in us that thrives, that does well in small communities of face-to-face people that all your life in small face-to-face community. There are some now there's the dark side of it too, because you can
gangs,
on one hand
townies,
absolutely, or even like the small community you grow up in, there's the aspect that in a good and in a bad way, community builds some pressure to conform.
Sure.
Meaning that if everyone around you, knows your business, knows your family, knows that, there is a pressure to conform that will limit your worst tendencies, the kind of stuff that, as you put it, the psycho aspects, that if you could get away, you do this weird shit. That's kept in check through people being able to get back at you in no time. But also, that happens both in good and bad ways. The stuff that gets squashed is
some of the unique characters that go against the grain. Yeah,
that's not how we do things. And it becomes it limits. So it's like anything else. It's a double-edged sword. It's an interesting double-edged sword because it certainly seems to address some of the stuff that we lack. That's why my ideal would be to combine the two. To have
create your own tribe,
but to have the face-to-face community aspect that will badly lack today.
That would encourage individuality.
That exactly leaves you free to also connect with a global community, which thanks to internet you can do. So you're not just stuck with the 50 people in your village that all you ever know is what they say and approve of.
Yep.
You are exposed to a much wider world, but you're also connected with a face-to-face community.
Yeah, I think that makes the most sense. I think, I've been reading and learning from a lot of the Toltec teachers, and they call it, the mitote, the dream, and that co-created dream can become really strong, and you could try and conform to it, and basically love yourself or not love yourself by the standards with which you fit into that dream. And that may not even be your dream. That could be your tribes, that could be the world's or whatever. But you end up judging yourself based on those standards, and it can be extremely harsh, and it can really torture people, lead to a lot of depression and guilt and self-hate. So
yeah, because it's one thing if you take 50 awesome human beings and you have them start their tribe, everybody has a blast. If you get David Koresh start his tribe with 50 people and Branch Davidians or something, suddenly community has a very different meaning there. And it's darker and ugly and weirder and repressing, abusive, and the whole bad line of it all. So it can go either way. At the end of the day, in fact, we can argue about how, on a social level, how things should be, or what kind of laws are more desirable than others. And clearly some things are more desirable than others, but at the end of the day it boils down to the quality of human beings implementing certain things. The tribal idea is not independent from the actual individuals involved. That's what makes all the difference. Speaking of tribal idea, should we murder the next tribe with spraying water everywhere, killing the audio of our podcast? Can I just go with my tomahawk and just kill a few and...
it is a little loud. I think we can probably deal with it. Do you want to move into...
I'm okay, depending on how the audio's going.
I think it'll probably be all right.
We're good?
Yeah, I think we'll be okay. Cool. So, so I wanted to get back to, how did you get introduced to the Lakota? And how did you...
Lakota stuff was when I moved to the U.S. around the time... My mom moved to the U.S. shortly before me, and she has been a journalist all her life, and when she went back to Italy the first time, some human rights organization was asking her to take a look into a couple of cases of people who have been in prison in South Dakota and the American Indian guys, and the cases were very shady in the sense that the evidence didn't add up to a conviction, that the sentencing was ridiculous.
They were imprisoned inside the reservation, or
no, state prison, but they were American Indians. And so she started going there, realizing once she had a face-to-face meeting with one of these guys, she was like, this is just so fucked up, it's not even funny. So she started working on a legal case to help one guy because the whole thing was a joke. Where
just racist motivations?
Racism played an enormous role in the whole thing. And so then through him, it became more of a personal thing. You start visiting his family, you start visiting here, and this friend at the other reservation invites you over to go to. So over time, it became. We just ended up going there a lot.
That's cool.
Spent a lot of summers there, and it's funny. The first time I was exposed to a Lakota Sundance, which was outlawed for the longest time because...
Along with the ghost dance? I thought it was just the...
Sundance, a lot. Most American Indian religions, period, forget Lakota, just in general, American Indian religions were outlawed from the 1880s to a good chunk of the 1900s. Some ceremonies even longer.
Right.
Sundance being one of them because it involves piercing and shedding of blood. And so it was like one of the things that was considered barbaric and terrible and so on. And so it was like, can't go. And I didn't even know that they were ongoing, now that it was legal again, that they were ongoing or regularly practiced. So when I was invited to the Sundance, I was feeling a little self-conscious because, you don't end up in the middle of some forgotten reservation in South Dakota by, I happen to be there, it's like a dirt road in the middle of nothing. And everybody else was, 90% of the people there were Lakota, was a few people who know somebody else. We got invited through one person, but you do feel a little self-conscious getting there. You're like, ooh, okay. And it was a trip because within a few minutes till we got there, it was the day before the ceremony begins, they ask for all the men to go help cut this tree, that then to be carried on everybody's shoulder. I forget what the reason is, but the tree is not supposed to hit the ground. So when you cut it, you're supposed to then rock it back and forth so you can...
Sounds like a team-building exercise.
Yeah, it seriously is. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I go, we start pushing, cutting, doing this whole thing, and because the tree then will be used as part of the ceremony. It's replanted in the center of this field, and it's around the tree that the Sundance will take place. Cut, the tree finally gives, and I don't get my hand fast enough out. And so the tree falls against another tree where we are to rest it, except my hand gets stuck in between.
Ouch.
Out of like a gigantic freaking, I don't know how many hundreds of pounds thing. Everybody push, I get my hand out, it's like blood everywhere, there's like...
Well, that's part of the ceremony, Daniel.
Right,
you were just a little early.
Right,
You're
exactly.
supposed to wait.
Yeah.
You just got a little excited.
I got overexcited. And bone was broken into pieces, bunch of the skin was gone, it was nasty, right? So somebody take off their shirt, wrap it around it, and that's where it got weird, because I didn't feel any pain. I was like, I'm supposed to feel pain here, you know, what's going on? And I remember going back to the camp, and there was this old Lakota lady who was like, oh, that tree, well, that's a very sacred tree. I'm like, that's sweet, that's a very big tree too, so it's like, I'm not reassured here, it's not the... And in an odd kind of way, it was an excellent icebreaker, because that everybody had a reason to come talk to me and chat and make it feel... And the weird part about it, and I don't know how to explain it, I mean, what the hell,
you told the story. They healed your finger.
Yeah, the whole thing, like, I mean, it hurt like hell the
next
day.
So what did they do exactly? To walk us through that, because this was one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. What exactly went on? How did they do this ceremony? You have a broken finger, clearly broken, not just bruised, right?
Yeah, I would say in a couple of parts, like around each knuckle there was snapped in different directions.
Right.
By the time I unwrapped it, a few hours later after we bandaged it, did this whole thing, it swelled up so big that you couldn't even tell what was what anymore. It was just like, where is it? Who knows? It's like this giant thing. Closest hospital is like 2-3 hours away, so it's like, yeah, good luck, you know, we're not going there. By that very night, when I started touching it, it hurt like hell, but it didn't feel snapped anymore like it was before.
What happened? What did she do to it, though, first? What was she just said it was going to be okay?
Yeah, basically.
She didn't put her hands over it or anything?
Didn't do shit.
Do shit.
Nothing.
Didn't smoke anything, didn't burn anything. Nothing. Just looked you in the eye and said,
oh, it should be, not even he's gotta be okay. It's like, it's a sacred thing. You could be okay. It's like, that's reassuring, but is for a while I really couldn't tell what was what, because it was so swollen and weird, and the next day started hurting like crazy, and it was really painful. But it was weird. It would come and go. Like some of these guys, and again, this could be completely placebo effect, could be some. I report it as it is. I have no idea why or how or anything, but there were some times when some of the sun dancers would come around and like wipe it with sage. Mm-hmm. That's it. And you would feel, again, placebo, not, who knows, you would feel like pain was leaving the finger. Mm-hmm. And I would be okay for a while, and then it hurts again, and we, went through it a few times. And at the end of the sun dance, because the sun dancers have gone through such a ordeal, the idea is that they are supposed to be charged with a power that they are able to do things that they normally couldn't.
And what is involved in the sun dance? Basically, frenzied dancing?
They dance for 4 days from the time the sun comes up to the time the sun goes down, with some breaks in between, but long stretches of dancing while they are fasting. And then some of the dancers, not everybody, at various points during the dance, one of the dancers is going to go up to the tree, they're going to pray, one of the people running the sun dance is going to come up, lift some skin off their chest, pierce it with either a knife or something, put a wooden skewer through it that's tied to a rope that's tied to the tree. The person is then going to keep dancing attached to the tree until either a few minutes later or even a whole 4 days later, they pull back and break loose.
Whoa.
So it's a pretty hardcore thing that first the obvious question is, why, God, why? Why would you do that to yourself?
Yeah.
And they pierce also the same way from the back, in this case dragging buffalo skulls around the Sandance circle, and either your skin gives and you free yourself, or if you go around and it doesn't give, you're getting too tired, you're gonna pass out. So then they give you a break, you stay there 1 second, they ask kids to come sit on the buffalo skulls, pinning them in place, so then you push forward and break loose.
That sounds like it would just create a horrible wound. Like a ripping, like pregnancy of the back.
Not that bad.
Like where your vagina and your asshole become one giant.
Not quite that bad, but you definitely get scars. People have Sundance scars all the time. And when I read about it, every other thing about Lakota religion made sense to me. Sweat lodge, smoking of the pipe, vision cast, it all was very, I get it. You read about the Sundance, or even the way I'm talking about it now, it's like, yeah, what the fuck? Why would anybody do that? It sounds gory, weird, and disturbing. And being there, I can't explain it any better. I don't have a good way to explain it. Where like, no, it's not because, I don't know because of what, but it doesn't feel that way.
Right.
In the contest, it actually felt very, there was something beautiful about it.
Right.
Nothing, there was no people getting off on suffering and gore and look at me, any of that stuff. But was, I really can't explain it. I don't know what it is. But there's an energy to the whole thing.
It's interesting, applying pain and injury to yourself has a long history of religious tradition. And, Huxley has some explanations in, I think it's Doors of Perception book. Basically it's releasing some different types of toxins and he has a biochemical example of what it's doing to your system to create this kind of mystical experience. Basically putting things through your system to shut off the parts of your brain that are preventing you from experiencing whatever that experience is, whatever that sacred experience is. So there's definitely, at least in his mind, some scientific backing to it, but it's an interesting way to go. So, all right, so there you are, your finger eventually fully heals up.
Getting bad. Yeah, what happens is at the end of the Sundance, there's a whole people from the local community who come up because the Sundancers at the very end are going to run through everybody, and they basically prey on everybody who has physical, psychological, whatever issues they have. The Sundancers don't need to know about it; they just prey over.
Because they're on their game at that point.
Exactly. The idea is that they have an energy that they are not going to be able to do it a week later or at any other point. But in that moment, they have a certain power. And in my case, it was weird because eventually, once the swelling went down enough, it did feel that very night, like the whole thing was in one piece, and the skin regrew fairly quickly over a month period. The nail came back, and to the point where you couldn't tell that it ever happened. I mean, eventually I could still see there was like a scar that was going around the finger, but I really, just because I remember it, I can still see it. Otherwise, I don't think you can even tell.
So you had another experience like that too, where someone told you that your urine was going to turn black.
Oh yeah, that was a trip. Yes.
And then you're like, this is bullshit, So tell us that experience.
Yeah, that was a trip. There was a really shitty period in my life, and this one medicine man was like, somebody puts bad medicine on you. Bad medicine is their idea for basically the black magic.
Sure.
And I was like,
what tradition was this?
This was, the guy speaking was from a Lakota context. I don't know as far as the guy applying as in bad medicine. And the thing was like, but you're almost okay, you're going to be fully okay one day your urine will turn black, and then is when you have purged it out. And I'm like, try again? My urine turns black? Yeah. Okay, that sounds great.
I'll get back to you.
Except that like a month later, I go to the bathroom and suddenly there's this black stream coming out, and I'm like, what the fuck is that? It's like, are you kidding me? That was strange to say the least. And I did feel a lot better. Now, none of these things I have any idea or explanation, or is even going through all that doesn't mean that I believe anything or disbelieve anything. Like in my book, believing or disbelieving means nothing, because it's about conjecturing about stuff that you don't fully understand. So to me, the laws of the universe normally function this way, and so if you tell me that certain things are gonna, somebody's gonna pray over me and the finger is gonna be okay, I'm like, yeah, thanks, I would rather have a doctor put a cast on most of the time. But at the same time, I'm open to the fact that weird stuff apparently does happen. And again, I wouldn't, I'm not going to go to the Sundance tree and try to push it again and see what happens the second time.
You're not going to test it.
I'm not like, but I guess those were the kind of experiences that remind you that the universe is weirder and more complex than we can ever understand.
What does it say? Wakantanka, the Great Mystery?
Yep, precisely.
Yeah. Well, at least, it opens your eyes to, obviously you go on a place like Reddit, and try and tell those stories. Oh, bullshit, placebo, but there's things that are happening that are not readily explainable. Yeah. Absolutely. And, I get it a lot more in the there's one particular experience I had, a psychedelic experience with ayahuasca, and a lot of the argument, oh, it's just in your head, it's just in your head. There's some experiences that you have though, where it's like, that was not in my head.
Right.
I don't expect you to believe me.
Yep.
I don't, just
I
believe
wouldn't
whatever
either.
you
It's
want.
like, exactly.
Yeah,
it's not about.
But this is what happened,
Yep.
and this is what it felt like, and this is, and to get the chance to go through some of those things, I think is important to kind of open your eyes and say, hey, we don't know everything.
No. We know
a lot,
very little,
very
actually.
little.
Yeah.
And actually, all the quantum physics that are coming out are pointing to more mysteries than solutions, anyways.
When my daughter was born, hasn't happened in a while now, but the first couple of years, some of the stuff that she would say or do was so damn weird. Like there was a level of stuff that she wasn't supposed to know that she knew perfectly. Or like I remember when there was this one time when my dad had a problem with his eye, but you couldn't tell, like by looking at him, his eyes move fine, they focus fine, and she never heard anybody talk about it, and she went up to him, pat his eye, and say, oh, you did a boo-boo here, what happened? And I was like, how the fuck did you know that? Things like that where you're just, again, I don't know why, I have no idea. And the problem is people who like these things, they start conjecturing where they will come up with complex explanation about, and this is how it works, and this is because of that. It's like, how the hell do you know? It's like, take it for what it is. That was weird. Beyond that, just keep an open mind.
Yeah.
There's just no... But yeah, the number of times that weird things has happened that leaves me feeling humbled by the universe around us, it's a lot. It's
Absolutely
definitely a lot.
I think you look at something like the phenomenon of quantum entanglement, right? Do you know much about that? It's where basically a photon, they can get it, there's these linked photons, and they can separate them by however long they're going to do. I think they're actually taking one of them now and putting it in space to try this out, just for shits. It's going to happen the same way.
Where one affects it, yeah.
So they cause one to change its rotation or change its spin, and instantaneously, or at least so many thousand times faster than the speed of light, they can't tell if it's instant or if there is that fraction of whatever, faster than light by a long shot.
Yeah.
The other one will change as well. So they have really no explanation for this, and nobody seems to care enough about it. I look at it, I'm like, hey, there's something going on there.
Yep.
Everybody's like, it's just an anomaly. It's just a weird thing in there. It's like, look harder. Pay attention. Yeah. That means that there's something communicating between those two that is non-material. And if there's something that's non-material, that means there's something else.
Yep.
And that's all you have. You don't have to take it any farther than that. Just to know that, hey, there's something else there, and science doesn't always go all the way.
Yeah, I love science. It's certainly preferable to superstition and ignorance, but at the same time, there are clear limits to our scientific knowledge currently.
Sure.
And 300 years from now, the range of our scientific knowledge would have expanded so much that we probably can explain stuff that today just looks mysterious and weird. But people get too stuck on science about if it cannot be replicated in a lab every single time then it's not real. And it's like, not everything works that way.
Yeah. Take your eye up a little farther and get a little perspective, and we'll start to see that. But, you start, as soon as you realize that there could be something besides the material, then all of these other phenomena start to make sense, and I know there was a phenomenon with my grandmother who tells this story very vividly back a long time ago. My uncle Craig at the time had a terrible injury at home, and my grandfather was a professor, had been preparing for this lecture for 3 months, huge lecture, big implications for whatever, driving far away. They didn't have cell phones, pagers, nothing. There was no ambulance that they could call. I think he'd broken a couple bones where the bone was sticking out. Yeesh. And no neighbors around that had cars or anything. So she just sits down and realizes she has very few options. He has to get to the hospital. My grandfather Aubrey is not going to be home for many hours, 8 hours, and just starts saying, Aubrey, come home. Aubrey, come home. Yep. And then Aubrey gets there, gets to his lecture podium, big packed house, and all of a sudden he closes up his book and he says, I can't explain it, guys. I'm so sorry. I have to go home. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Right. You're the keynote. You know, you've been preparing for this. He's like, I'm sorry, I have to go home.
Yeah.
And so he turns around and goes home, comes there and sees, you know, my Uncle Craig with a broken leg.
Yep.
Coincidence? Yeah. I mean, what kind of crazy scenario in that you're building up for months, you know, would cause him to come home?
There's just no way.
There's no way. Something happened.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why when people try at all costs to dismiss things, it must be a coincidence. Like,
right.
Why can't you accept that the universe is weird?
Yeah.
That, yes, the laws that you are acknowledging apply 99%
most
of the time.
You're right.
They don't right here, clearly. And, the example you bring up, I mean, not as dramatic, but I've seen or experienced stuff like that, either directly or through someone else I know and trust so many times that is, to me, is not weird. Mm-hmm. It's just like, oh yeah, once in a while it happens. Wouldn't it be fun if we could actually control it and you could actually call a wheel whenever you want, not just... Because then you'll try another time and it doesn't work, right? It's like, motherfucker, I was calling you the whole time.
I did the same thing.
It's like,
yeah, exactly.
It would be fun. You know, if you can control it, would be a blast. Would be in Vegas going blackjack.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
totally. But, and I've met some people who try really hard. They had no luck with that. They had the craps table in their house,
right?
And they would just try to control the craps stocks, you know. And they think they get it, and they go to the casino and just crash.
Yes.
You know, no good.
Yeah,
it's a challenge, but there are some weird phenomena that definitely go on.
Absolutely.
And I guess that was supposed to be, you know, the purpose for religion, to explain the weird things, except, as we all know too well, it's not exactly the direction it all went.
And I think the idea of trying to explain it is wrong to begin with, because unless you really know what's going on and you fully understand it, which nobody I know does, let's put it that way, why waste your time explaining it? You know?
Or make a cute story like a turtle holds the world on its back.
Right. And,
something,
you know,
okay, fine. Yeah, let's go with that.
Exactly. And just embrace the mystery. You know, accept the fact that we live in a mysterious world, and it's, who knows why? And but I think for most people it takes an insane level of self-confidence to accept mystery, because there's too much insecurity, there's too much fear about, you know, you want answers about what happens when you die, what happens, is there meaning in the universe or not, where did my loved ones go, is there morality or is it all random chaos? You know, all of these things that freak out human beings badly. Most people are just not comfortable enough with just saying, we don't know.
Yep.
Deal with it. I don't want to deal with it. Either you give me a good answer or give me a bullshit answer, but give me some answer, because I can't live without it. You know?
Right. I think it's kind of a aspect of the human mind. You know, we're constantly looking to put answers in. The problem is people get stuck to them.
Yep.
You know, they're not temporary answers; they're permanent answers, and you'll fight to the fucking death to defend those answers. Well, this has been a real pleasure. I'm looking forward to our podcast. We'll get a little bit more into the religion that I've created for myself, perhaps, and chat about some other stuff.
Let's do that.
We'll do it. Awesome, guys. Definitely check out the Drunken Taoist podcast to hear more of me and Daniele Bolelli going off into cyberspace here, figuring it all out. Take care.
Thank you.